Hi everyone, Thrifty Overlander here. Today I want to cover how I do my airing up and airing down the equipment I use and kind of my strategies on that. So let's just dig right into it. Okay, I'm going to start with the compressor. I use I don't know, a lot of people just call them the little red compressors. There's different names on the same one. Superflow, I got another one that's called Masterflow. It's the exact same thing. I got it off of Amazon 2 and 3 years ago because I have two of them. I'll explain that in a second. They're typically, I paid $45 and $47 for these. A little hint and tip on that is there's a website called Camel that you put in your link from the buy page on Amazon, and it'll basically you can set a price and it'll alert you when it gets to that price, and it shows you the history so you can see what the lowest price was or something like that, and if it goes up and down. So in both of these cases I was in no hurry to get them, and so I put them in Camel. I got them for whatever, $8-10 less than what they normally go for. So that's a little thrifty tip there. But these little things are, like I said, pretty economical, and they still do the job just fine. I've never had a problem with them for the most part. The one thing I have had is after airing up on a hot day and doing a lot of airing up, I ended up with the fuse along the way getting kind of melted, so I put in a more heavy duty one, so I'm covered on that. But that's the only problems I've ever really had with this, and I've done a lot of airing up and airing down, so they're good pumps for that part. Okay, as far as where I store it, I actually have a bag that I bought from Harbor Freight, and I use that to store with it. It comes with an okay bag, but it's a little bit tight, and there's clips and zipper to do with it. This bag kind of just makes it easier for me because it does open wide. It's a big wide mouth opening, so it's just easy to get it in and out. And I do carry the set of coils that comes with the coil hose that comes with the pump itself. And I'll show you in a second, that's not what I use to air up and air down with, but I do carry it for a backup and in case I want to do other activities with the with the air compressor itself. So here you see it's in the bag, and there's plenty of room in there, but yet it's still fairly compact. And then this just closes up nice and neat. So I like that this is a wide mouth bag. That made a big difference for me. Now I do use a set of I guess you'd call it the hoses that I use to do 2 tires at once. I'm going to explain that in a minute, but I want to show you right back here is the bag I use for that. In the thrifty manner, I reuse bags. This happens to be just a little bag that was it had a rain fly in it with my tent, and I keep the rain fly with the tent. So it's kind of like a perfect bag, and it's just like a 1 foot square, fairly flat bag that works perfect to put this set of hoses in. So that's how I carry my 2 items, is these 2 things together. That covers all my inflation. As far as the tools I use, I do everything digital. I don't know, I've always done that. And so this is the pressure checker that I use, and it's worked just fine. I've used it for years. Had to replace the batteries once. Auto turns off, and I've never had any issues with it, so it's been great. So this is always in the glove box, handy. As far as deflating is concerned, up to now, this is what I've been using, is these deflators. Basically what they do is they unscrew from this and they screw onto each stem. There's 4 of them, so you can be airing down all 4 tires at the same time, and you just kind of walk around and check them. So this is each one's unscrewed. They screw into each other, and so they all stay together. It makes it easier, handier to take care of. It does screw onto the valve stem. There's a little peg inside there, so it pushes down on the valve stem, the valve itself, and releases the air through that. And then while you're airing down, you can do a pressure check on it. It does go onto this tip just fine. The only advice I have for that is that it's usually a good half a pound to maybe a pound high. So you just learn that, and you just make up for it. So if I want 19 pounds in my tires or something like that, I'll stop at 18. Another important tool that I use is gloves. I keep them handy, and I do use them when I'm airing up. When you use a little red compressor, and I think almost every compressor it does this, but when you're airing up 4 tires from 15 to 35 pounds or something on that order, they get pretty darn hot, and the hoses and metal parts near the compressor get pretty hot too. So I make sure when I'm dealing with the pump to put it away and so forth that I've got gloves on, because it can kind of scald you. Now about the hose part of my air up and air down strategy, this is what I've created. I'm doing a setup where I've got made so I can do 2 tires at once. So one side of the truck, either driver or passenger side, gets done at the same time. And I'm at this point right now, I'm using this just for airing up. So the key components on this is it's got, one connector that goes to the actual compressor itself. I come into a T so I can get my pressure gauge. I did splurge a little bit and went ahead and got digital. I'm just a digital fan. I don't know. Maybe it feels more precise, or I don't know. If it works, it seems to work. And then I know it's accurate. And an example of that is the gauge that's on the little red compressors is not accurate at all. It even has some sort of a scale to tell you how far off it gets. So you can't really use that. And then I also have a valve I've added to this. You want to be able to basically turn off the flow from the compressor to the tires so that you get an accurate reading of how much air is in the tires themselves. This is what's going to the tires. So then from there, it's just a coil of hose or some hose. This is Harbor Freight hose. It was pretty cheap. I don't know how much it was, $15 for, if even that, for 25 feet. And I just basically chopped that up. So partway into the hose is a T, so that basically it's coming from the front of the truck. It tees from here. A shorter hose goes to the front tire, then a little bit longer hose will go to the back tire. So from that T, so that's one of the small components. So then from there it goes around and you end up with the two connectors. And this is kind of one of the key pieces of this setup strategy is these are basically the tire chucks. They go onto your valve stem and they lock on. You can see here, whenever it goes on, it locks down onto it. And these ones hold very strong. I've never had any problems with them popping off or anything like that. A friend of mine has done a similar setup of this, and he had the type with a little lever on it that kind of just snaps onto the top of the valve stem, and that he's had problems with, and he went ahead and spent the money and got these. So I'm a thrifty person, but this was kind of worth the money, and they're like $12 a piece. So this was like a bigger chunk of the expense was these chucks, but I think it's worth it. It's kind of like what do they say, buy once, cry once. In this case, I think that's the case, because even my friend has kind of proven so. So when I did buy this piece of hose from Harbor Freight, obviously it's one piece of hose, and then you got to strategize how you're going to use it. In my case, I use the two ends of the hose at these ends, so I don't have any extra. This is what I'm handling when I'm doing the chuck part of it. On the actual valve stem, so my hands are on this more. I didn't want, these extra, things sticking up from it. So I made sure, and then also this is where it's going to bend the most and stuff like that. So I made sure the ends from the hose that I chopped up was getting used at the actual valve stem chucks. So then from there, it's just a matter of getting the parts. I'll put some of the parts in the description of where I got them, and you can kind of see what they are. And all that. So that's really my strategy on this, and it works quite well. I've never had a problem with it. Again, this gauge, with the way that it works through the hoses and all that kind of stuff, ends up being about a pound off. If I want 40 pounds, I got to go to 41 on this. But it's something I learned almost instantly just by checking the pressure one time afterwards. But that's about it. It's just 1 pound off. So with this, because this hose is long enough, then I'm able to keep the compressor just sitting on the front bumper. My front bumper is that Shockworks one, so it's got a pretty big flat area on it. I just keep it in one place, and I can go from both sides from that one spot. If I didn't have that bumper, I'd probably put it on the air box that's pretty flat inside the engine compartment. And I could reach all 4 tires from there without having to move it. Okay, real quick, I just want to show you how the lock chuck works onto an actual valve stem. So basically, you just push it onto it and shove it on there, and it's on there solid. It doesn't come off. There's no problems at all with that. It stays on good. Taking it off, you just pull it, and it comes right off. So that's how these work. They lock on really well. I can't recommend them enough. As a bonus, I have my friend Sean's air hose setup to show you. He's done it similar to what I have, only he's taken it to the next level. So he does it. I have a setup for all 4 tires at once. So basically, he's got 2 sets of hoses then that can go down each side of the truck. So again, same thing. He's got the same chucks and then and he's doing it in the middle of the hose. He's got a T just the same as mine. He's just doing a coil hose instead, and then mine's all one piece. He's got it so it comes apart. So this will go into the valve portion of it, and I'll show you that in a second. So then he's got that, that, and then identical setup, just the same thing. So he can go down one side or two side. It's up to him what he wants to do. I mean, he always does all 4 tires at once. So then basically on his whole valve setup, he's got a kind of a Y instead of just the T that I have on mine, so that he can do 2 sides of it at once. He's got the gauge on here as well, and the shut-off valve. So it's pretty similar to my setup, just that it does too. So basically, each one of these goes into here and snaps in, so that he can do 1 or 2 sides. And these are on mine and this one, they're all closed by default. So if you unhook one hose, the air is not gonna come out from the other tires or anything like that. It's all sealed off whenever you disconnect the hose from that. And then basically this is the end that goes into the actual compressor itself. So pretty similar, just that it's another level up, and he does all 4 at once. So the other thing he has added on his versus mine, and I may do this as well, is he's got this 2-ended piece that he made. And really the reason for that is that one of the things about these small red compressors is that they have kind of a backwards, the chuck that comes off of the actual compressor itself is a male, so that whenever you're doing this, it's got to be female that goes onto it. But when you're using a home compressor, it's kind of the opposite. So if he wants to use a setup for his home compressor, then he does, puts this in here so that it works with his home compressor. The other advantage that has for it is he can put this in, and if he wants to get all this out and do airing down, he can hook it all up, air down all 4 tires at once, because this is normally closed. So once this is in, then it's open, and then he can just go by the gauge and release air and check his gauge and have all 4 of them exactly aired down to the same amount. So I realize that none of what I've showed you is that much rocket science. There's other sites and other videos you can watch that show you how to make these same setups we have and everything else. Kind of my theory on this is trying to be more thrifty with time than I am with money. Those, like I said, those chuck locks that go on the valve stems are not that cheap, but they're worth it. And I'd like to be able to do kind of 2 tires at once, or in this case, like Sean did, 4 tires. They're all even and everything else. So it does tend to go a little bit faster. The old way, when I used the hose that came with the pump itself, that thing screwed on to the actual stems itself. So you had to screw it on, go for a while, unscrew it, check your pressure. It's not right. Screw it back on, add more air, and do that 2 or 3 times. So that was kind of a pain. And with this quick release chucks and everything, it really does make a difference on time. I'd really appreciate it if you would maybe comment below any changes or differences that you do to your air up strategy that others might really get some good information out of. That'd be great. And if you enjoy this content, I'd really appreciate it if you would hit that subscribe button and like it. Thanks a lot. See you on the trail.